Hi guys. Hey guys, it's Evan. It's Tuesday, July 7th. It's 3:03:45 p.m. CT. And I'm super exhausted. I'm super tired. I'm doing my best not to overwhelm myself. I have to upload a document tomorrow. I'm behind on life and my homework, but I thought I'd show you guys my spine. I guess I just have some band-aids there. And I took a shower. I took a shower with them on, so they're a little wet right now. It's, I really do my best. I mean, it's painful, their injections, and I pray and I pray and I pray that it is as painless, but it's an injection, so the reality is it's going to hurt. There was some points whenever the doctor did the left spot, and I felt kind of like, I don't know, like a scoop. It felt like a scoop or like a shift on the left side that really hurt. And then on the right side, I kind of felt a little bit similar, like it was hooking on the right. And then, but it wasn't as bad as the left. Like it super hurt on my left side. So then I did my best. I think if I would have started off the procedure like comfortable, like in a comfortable position, then I think it wouldn't have been so bad. But because my arms were kind of like too close to me, I think it just was super tense. But if I would have just laid out, which I'll do next time, I'll probably just lay flat out. And I think I really just was breathing, just breathing and doing my best breathing through the pain. Mm, there's so much on my mind. It's like I'm having real lifetime interactions and some that not have gone over too well. Like the interaction I spoke about this morning in my morning vlog about that John, Operator 16 with the VAOIG, allegedly. And so it's like, even though John made my list of people like I absolutely just do not like, I think that it's like I have to prioritize and like, is it something that's just going to go away? No, because I mean, yes, I've reported it, but I don't think I've done enough in that case, in that scenario. But it's so not so much that like I have to upload a document by the ninth, and it's like I'm in school, I'm in three classes, I have like a ton of doctor's appointments and labs and procedures for me to get better. I mean, it's sad, like obviously I have to deal with like getting dinged on my grades and stuff, but at the same time, it's like all I can do is what's in my control to get myself help. And I think that when I vlog, I really make a difference, because even though people may not watch my entire videos, or I don't know, I feel like people chime in and people see my content, even if it's just for a few minutes. And it's just kind of weird how, like, these idiots that I interact with, like Morgan from the Grandad Lesson Terra RPM, like, talk about wasting time, and like John and the operator with VAYG, and then this phony lady that called me from Pen Company over the phone. Like, I think if you don't know how to like formulaically, like in a formula, explain to me the construct of man-made time, then don't even bother to talk to me about time. Like, for one, you can't even comprehend how to computate or calculate time, velocity, viscosity, or speed of your own freaking life, let alone try to tell me what is of value and what is worth talking about and not worth talking about, because I will have the screws and the kit in my spine for the rest of my life. So as far as anyone in a situational situation, that has the comprehension of what is worth value or what has the merit to be discussed, I think that I win that battle every time because my thing is I have way better things to do with my life and so many other things to enjoy and work towards building my energy and strength up. And it's not about happiness, it really isn't, because happiness is not everything in life. It's not working my way towards this happiness. I think that's why they call it the pursuit of happiness. But it's that understanding of not even peace, but that understanding of, for me, philosophy is key to me in every way of my life. Like, there is not one philosophical thing in my life. And one time, Miss Ricky from the Warriors Refuge, she asked me when I first got there, you know, I guess my belief on bearing arms or carrying a weapon, and I said I don't believe in that. I do not believe, and I do not believe in the use of weapons. Do I believe it is your constitutional right? Okay, but I don't believe in the use of weapons. And she was like, "Well, how are you going to defend yourself then? How will you defend yourself?" And I said, "Philosophy." And she said, "That's not enough." Well, that's like to each their own. But for me, philosophy has shown me that in life, it's not the peace. It's not. I think you can only achieve harmony, and you can only achieve inner peace is different than peace. World, worldly peace and world peace have you have to have not just a strategy as far as how to achieve it, but it's something that philosophy is something that is actually lived. And I think that many people maybe they become so romantic or poetic in the sense of philosophy, and that doesn't get you anywhere. I think with philosophy, what I understand about philosophy is that it is a true form of living. It's not just words, it's not just the manner in how you arrange a style, a format, a text, a script. It's not the arrangement of drafting or any of that or ideas. It is literally living and understanding the full cycle of life is the only way that we can really comprehend how death and resurrection within our own soul really matters. It makes you present in the sense that you have that comprehension through philosophy and even in interactions with people. Can I be a jerk and say straight off the bat, I'm interacting with somebody that has no idea of real life? Yes, but at the same time, they may have full comprehension of other things, such as, I don't know, knitting, crafting, underwater weave basket, welding, or something, whatever you want to call it. Like, and in that interaction, it's something that I can use my best judgment and say, like, this is somebody that is worth entertaining. And also, I think that I have maybe in one way been placed in these just horrible situations because I think that people really judge technology. Like, present day, you have all these colleges that are just lashing out on AI and lashing out on the AI takeover and things of that nature. But AI is only as good as the user. Like, I think in the geek world, it's always been said it's not computer error, it's user error. Like it's literally the person using the computer. You can't only blame the hardware for so much. So it comes into play in the sense that human capacity for me is based off my discernment. Like I've been talked to by real idiots, and I've been talked down to. I've been called the N word. I've been called homie. I've been degraded in so many ways. And it's one thing, I think, when you're in an informal discussion, but I think it's another thing. And it's like what you allow and what you tolerate, right? Like, obviously, for me, it's just not my being. It's not me to be so. I was brought up very proper, too proper, to the point where, as an adult, like I see how that education of being brought up speaking proper Spanish, speaking proper English, and just being brought up in that culture of like always knowing where you came from. Like my aunt would always, she taught me at a very very young age to read an egg and where like my great grandmother Josephine, my great grandmother Josefina, and my great grandmother, well, my great grandmother Josefina and my great grandfather Amado, they were both orphans. And my grandmother came from France, and they found each other in an orphanage. And that orphanage was once across the street from present day where my family's house is in Monterey. And it was an orphanage, like a nun orphanage type situation, and they grew up with each other, and they eventually left the orphanage and married each other, and not didn't get far, but across the street, and lived in a house across the street, and that's where they had, I think, 6 kids, 5 or 6 kids. They had one. My grandmother had one miscarriage. She had my uncle Antonio, Mundo, my grandma, her sister, and Conrad was the youngest. So however many that kids was, and they grew up. They were very, 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 very just poor. They were my grandmother and my great grandfather. They were orphans. I couldn't say like what age, but I do know that my great grandmother was an actress and a dancer, and she died at a very young age. So of stomach cancer, I believe, and that's not for certain, but it's oddly enough the same type of cancer that my grandfather's mom had too. So my grandmother, the story goes that when my grandmother, well, the story goes, if you ask my grandma, that she was so poor that she had to share one dress and one doll with her sister. But what I was getting at is my my spiritual trauma doesn't come from my young childhood or my upbringing. I think it comes more from my adulthood and being Chaplin's bodyguard. I've seen unreal things. So my I would say that maybe my grandmother had some form of spiritual trauma in a sense because of really coming to America, and I think she really didn't accept like American religion until, and I say American religion because it's not there are multiple Christianities, and if you explain this to anybody, they just they probably are very more prone to disagree. But I think that by American religion, I feel like mm, more the societal aspect of religion. You know, my grandmother very believes she believes very much so that God is everywhere, that you don't need to be in just one specific religion or church, that God is all knowing and all seeing. But I think, you know, maybe later on, like maybe when she was like maybe 50 years old, was it that I saw my grandmother start going to like American Christian churches. But up until then, and I think she really struggled with that. I think my grandmother really struggled with like going to churches openly because, and also I think that it wasn't that she struggled. I mean, she did struggle in that sense, but my grandfather was brought up as a Freemason. My great grandfather Rogelio and my grandfather, they were both Freemasons, and they both heavily believed in science. My great grandfather Rogelio was very well educated, and so was my grandfather. And I think that's where I think a lot of like maybe my perfectionism and my self criticism comes in, because my great grandfather Rogelio was always very like, one, he was very wealthy, and two, it was like if you didn't study anything, and it wasn't so much work. I think that my uncles and my mom have like this warped kind of understanding, because they were so spoiled and never really took to a lot like to heart any of the lessons that my grandfather Rogelio or my grandfather were trying to teach us, because they were just so spoiled rotten. My great grandfather was very wealthy, and my grandfather was too, and maybe that's probably from what my grandfather's always shared with me. You know, my grandfather left me the most he left anybody in the family, and I think that there was a lot of like internal retaliation towards me when my grandfather passed away, in the sense that so many people criticized me, so many people came at me in the sense of like just this animosity towards me, and not even out of like condolence, like I care, I'm so sorry for your loss. It was more they had this idea that my grandfather left me some form of money, or he left me something of value, and my grandfather made sure to let me know that the greatest thing that he left me was my intelligence. And he made sure my whole life to teach me these lessons of the sacrifices that he made to make a life in this country, and to never allow anybody to take my intelligence from me. And I myself, like, I always understood this, and maybe because I was babied in the way that, in a way, I was like my grandfather's youngest child. So he was just super protective. He never allowed anybody to touch me. My grandmother wanted things her way all the time. And my grandfather, I've never, ever really seen my grandfather mad at my grandma. I mean, did they have fights and bicker? Yes, but I think he would really get upset when she would try to like sneak me away or take me away, and my grandfather would say like, what for? And she's like, well, we're just gonna go to the dentist. And but I feel like my grandma would really push it, in the sense that like sometimes she wanted to go get me checked out by a doctor, and my like she really just never let it go. And my grandfather said no, like, I will not allow my child to be treated like a science experiment. Like, that's never going to happen. My grandfather worked in so many different like lab settings, making he made drill bit pieces, valves. He actually built machines that built biomedical machines. Like, he built them by hand, to the point where he actually like designed and built, like, he actually hand made the drill bits. He would sift through materials and make the drill bits, and he would use those drill bits to make the machine, the entire machine that then cut like material, like it cut aluminum or metals to make these valves. And these valves were used for so many different things. And eventually, later on, those valves became, at some point, the medical world began to source these valves. I guess they learned that in some way that they ended up becoming like for whatever somehow that came, I guess, a trend. They ended up using valves in chemotherapy, and so that was like a huge thing. And so my grandfather worked around a lot of individuals in the healthcare industry in that time frame. And I mean, they would purchase the valves, they would purchase the machines that he made, and I mean, was he like in direct interaction with them? No, really, his boss was and stuff, but he was around those like minded people at work every day. So he had it in his mind, having these interactions, or even for himself going to the doctor. Like, he just had this huge fear that if I would be taken to the doctor to be fixed to my grandmother's liking, that I don't know, like he just was not going to have it at all. Like, I think my grandfather always wanted this moment to come to light where I fully was aware of like me, who I am, and that how much he loved me to never allow anybody to do anything to me. And I think it also was always like those lessons that as a child that he really was really truly true to himself. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that he was super highly educated. My great grandfather was super wealthy in a time when people in that society did not have that type of wealth. I mean, so my grandfather went to like a very prestigious school in Monterey. As a teenager, he spoke fluent English in a time when like that wasn't really a thing. And he also played football. He played American football in Monterrey, Mexico at this school. And I think the tale goes that my great grandfather ended up working for the steel company in Milwaukee somehow. So my great grandfather left Monterey, and my grandfather was a teenager when he met my grandmother. My grandmother was still poor. And the way that they met was my grandmother was dating a what they call a naranjero. So my grandmother was dating. She was dating a what do you call a citrus fruit vendor. Yes, I don't know how else to say that. A fruiter. You can't say a fruity guy. Guy that sells fruits. A guy that sells specifically oranges. I don't know how you say that literal word for word in English, but I did my best. Naranjero is an oranger, but just whatever. So, and my grandfather was dating, according to my grandmother, a cross-eyed girl. I asked my grandfather, was she really cross-eyed? Like, was she literally cross-eyed? And he said yes. I don't know. I guess he, whatever. So, what happens? So, after my great grandmother Josefina passes away, my great grandfather Amado, he took it pretty hard and he never remarried. My great grandfather Amado lived till he was 93 years old. And he like made this huge like commitment to life, and with like those 5 6 kids he said like he was committed, like he loved my grandmother so much that he was going to raise these kids by himself alone, and never remarry, and he did exactly that. Like, he never remarried. He's my great grandmother. I If you look at pictures of my great grandmother, I think you can understand, like, she was gorgeous, she was beautiful, and he just took it really hard. So, but they still struggled with poverty. My grandmother would go frequent, I guess you would say. So I'm trying to think now. It's hard for me. I would guesstimate like one now modern day at Google Maps did. So now they've like joined a couple units or a couple houses. So I would say it's about three three houses down, like this on the left of that house in Monterey to the corner block, and the block just goes around. And at that exact corner, my grandfather's family owned that convenience store. And for the summers, my my grandfather's uncle and an uncle would let him come work at the shop just for cash, for extra cash, money for the summertime while he was out of school or whatever. So he was working as a clerk, shop clerk, and he said that he would see this like poor girl, like she was really, really poor, and she would always come in and just get whatever from the little bit of money that she had, the little bit of pesos that she had for certain particular things. And my grandfather said, like, he would notice that, she would always kind of contemplate and not having enough for these cookies. And they're called Maria cookies. I think they're called like gamesa, but they're like called coffee cookies, or the Maria coffee cookies. I don't know how to explain it in English, but I'm doing my best. So, and different dialects say different things. So, like, some people say they call them croquetas, but they're really not croquetas. They're traditional coffee, Mexican coffee cookies is what they are, and they call them Marias. So my grandfather said that he just bought her the pack. Like, he said, he just told her, you can have them, you can have these cookies, and that they started off conversation over the counter, and that's kind of where the story begins. Just my grandmother being poor, my grandfather being rich, the rich boy that worked in the shop, and they started conversation, and they both kind of were into each other. I guess I'm putting it in modern day terms. That's awful, but they were both kind of into each other. But as they started to like, well, they knew about each other at that point, and they like knew that they were into each other, and they knew about each other and would see each other, and but they both have admitted to me that they shared, I don't want to say jealousy, but they shared like kind of like the same feelings in the sense that they both liked each other, but they were both in relationships, and they were both in relationships with people that they just like couldn't stand. Like, my grandma said she couldn't stand that my grandpa was with a cross-eyed girl, and my grandpa said that he couldn't stand that my grandma was just like this poor, what do you call, like a poor fruit vendor. And like, I guess they were just like, my both kind of like, I can't believe he's with her instead of me, and he was like, I can't believe she's with him instead of me, kind of thing. They both were kind of in that stage for a little bit, until finally my grandpa was very gentleman. He finally asked her to be, asked my grandpa Mado, and did the right thing, and they started dating my grandma, and then they got married and had all these babies. So anyways, break time.